Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Blizzard Watch podcast. I'm Matt. I'm the host. With me this week are my absolutely amazing co-hosts, Firestar and Iceman, a.k.a. Joe Perez and Liz Harper. Yes, I guess I'm saying I'm Spider-Man in this group.
I'm going to fight
right.
you. Well, I'm going to fight you.
I'm going to be Firestar. Straight up, I'm Firestar. You be Spider-Man. That also means you have to host the show, though, Joe.
Who's left in this case? What am I supposed to be today?
Well, you want to trade Iceman for Firestar? Would you rather be Firestar or Iceman?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'll go with Iceman. He's a classic and one of the original 5 X-Men.
And an Omega level mutant.
Yes. Anyway, going along, there's a lot of stuff to talk about today. I'm just going to jump straight to this one. I'm not even going to ask my massively amazing co-hosts any questions about their days or lives or whatever, because the War Within pre-patch, patch 11.0.1, is theoretically out today. Go ahead, Liz.
Coming out today.
Yeah.
As we record this, maintenance has been extended twice and currently supposed to be going up at 7 p.m., but we'll see how it goes. It's stretching well into the evening.
The world is on fire for maintenance.
Well, I made a post on Twitter saying maintenance had been extended, and I said, 7 p.m. on the West Coast is 10 p.m. on the East Coast, and that's basically bedtime for everyone who's playing this game for the past 20 years. So
yeah,
kind of feeling it.
But this does also mean that for those of you who are waiting, so not only can we not tell you how the launch went yet because it hasn't actually launched yet, but also there's going to be a host of bugs when this thing goes live, and it's not their fault. That's what happens. But first day, there's always a host of the strangest bugs, and nobody knows what they're going to be. And this means that my Christmas is not going to be happening until I wake up and get to log in finally. Because for me, seeing the ways that these patches break games is like, it's just so sweet to me now. It's like an orange dipped in chocolate, dipped in other players' pain. And I can eat that all day. And the thing is, there's of course stuff that causes me pain. But oddly enough, even that excites me. Because I'm like, are they going to bring back the charge bug? Like, you don't remember the charge bug?
Yes.
Oh, the charge bug, guys. I'm not going to bother explaining it to you, but regardless. Anyway, we are waiting for the War Within pre-patch. It's bringing a lot of the systems and changes from the War Within. It is not bringing everything. You can't get your hero talents yet, as far as I'm aware. No hero talents. No. Obviously, the new islands and stuff aren't going to be there. You can't level. Do we know the max level for this expansion? Like, I keep forgetting.
We get another 10 levels, so up to 80.
To 80? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're at level 70 now. I thought.
Isn't that math? Isn't that how math works? I don't know.
It's not that you're wrong. It's just that I honestly can't remember what level we currently are.
It's a level, one of those levels.
Oh, listen, levels are made up. They don't matter. It's all borrowed power anyway, and it'll get squished at some point. We've been 50 like 8 times at this point. That's fine.
Yeah, it is kind of hard at some point to like really remember. But regardless, a lot of stuff that is coming. Like, for instance, we're getting warbands.
That's a big one. And my guess is it's warbands is the thing that's delaying this patch, because that's such a huge, like, a conceptual change to World of Warcraft, where we're going from thinking about characters as an individual unit to thinking about the players who play those characters as an individual unit. And that's just, I can only imagine the database nightmare this is, because it's a fundamental change for a 20-year-old game.
Yeah. Well, a fundamental change coding-wise, I think the mentality has been there for a while.
Yeah, the mentality has been there, but technically, it feels like a very large shift in how the game works. And we are talking about a 20-year-old code base, which you might have some stuff in there that's a little kludgy, maybe a tiny bit of technical debt. So
listen,
I can just
all I know is that
the nightmare.
All I know is that Yogg Saron is going to be absolutely fine when the servers come up. That's all I know.
Well, the server's going to come up. We got to go visit Yogg, just make sure he's doing okay. And yeah, definitely, that's totally the first thing I'm going to do.
I forget, I think this is going back a ways now, but when they started updating the class calls for like monks, when you fight Nefarian in Blackwing Lair, I remember going in there and the monk class call went off, even though it was just me. There were no monks. And he just kept doing the monk class call like over and over again. And I mean, he didn't get to do much of anything over and over again. He got to be alive for like, I think 12 seconds, and he did the monk class call twice. Like, what's happening? Why there's no monks here. It's not affecting anyone. What are you doing, man? Is there a monk following me? What's going on? But regardless, in addition to the warbands, which I think we should point out that there's a post. We put a post up talking about how once the servers are actually up, there's like a 20 to 40 minute process to get your warband to even happen.
Yeah, it has to like convert you over to the new system, and they phrased this really weirdly to the point where I'm not sure how long it will take, because they said up to 20 minutes or longer.
So yeah, it's likely going to be based off the server. It's likely going to be 20 minutes is the goal, and with everybody slamming the servers, you might get it by tomorrow. Because let's be honest, like the amount of people that are going to be logging in as soon as that server goes up today, it's going to be massive.
Oh yeah. And also, how many people are out there who have a max number of characters on their account?
That's what's so unusual.
There are going to be, a few of them, maybe. So
not that many. He can't. He didn't log in and delete a character, so he can't. No.
That's just so much data to process. I mean, this is 20 years of Warcraft characters that we've all been collecting with their banks full of who knows what. What's in my void storage? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure there's something. I haven't touched my void storage
in like 2 expansions. I forgot that existed. I'm not even gonna lie.
It does exist, and you probably have something sitting there. I'm just saying.
There's a mount that you already had that you put in void storage, and it's just sitting in there going, "I will get you for this, Joe. I will get you."
Yeah, that seems about right.
But yeah, the warband's going to take like the 20 minutes or so or longer, that's hilarious to me, because literally you're just saying it will take time.
It will take as long as it takes. I think that's the message.
Everything is up to 20 minutes and longer. Literally every amount of time you can pass is up to 20 minutes or longer. It's just 5,000 years. That's definitely longer than 20 minutes. 1.5 billion years, definitely longer than 20 minutes. I'm hoping it won't be 1.5 billion years. I'm relatively sure that I would not.
Listen, if I get to log in before the heat death of the sun, I'm good.
I mean, that would be nice. I don't like heat deaths. I like to avoid. But yeah, there's this. There's lots of transmog changes. We talked about that last week. We did talk about a lot of the changes already. So I don't want to drag on it. But I do want to mention, in addition to the stuff, the allied races, we know of one for sure, and there's data mining about another one we're going to talk about fairly soon. But we're not getting those yet.
Yeah, we're not getting those. Because to roll an Earthen, you actually have to be max level and finish the campaign. So we may data mine some more stuff about them. I don't know. But yeah. So we're a little ways away from that.
Delves, those are not going to be there. Those are specifically the new continent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. Any content that is based in the new continent or requires you to do it, you can't get there. And so you can't do that. Hero talents, allied races, anything in that continent, we're not getting there. And apparently also the patches today, but Remix isn't ending until August 19th. So if you are playing Mr. Pandaria Remix, you've got till August 19th, which is a week before the launch of the actual expansion. So you've got, I don't want to say a month because it's the 23rd, but you've got around a month.
If you hit the login screen, it'll tell you exactly how many days you have left, which is, I don't know if it's long enough because there's all this stuff I still want to get, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, and we don't know. Remix is the most advanced of the weird. I don't want to call them weird, but they basically have had these interesting little mini patch things. Like they had Plunderstorm, and Plunderstorm was fairly ambitious. It was like an entire game mode added to World of Warcraft that you could just log into from the login screen. You didn't even have to. You weren't playing regular World of Warcraft when you played Plunderstorm. Remix sort of has that same thing where you can log in directly to it, but at the same time you're playing Mr. Pandaria just remixed. So I think in a way it was more ambitious. I don't know if we're going to get another remix. I wouldn't imagine us getting it anytime soon. certainly not, in the opening months of the next expansion. You don't need this kind of content stuff when new content is going to be coming out.
Yeah, they're going to wait.
Yeah.
I think they're going to wait for a lull.
Yeah, it's for the period when, okay, we're not quite ready to tell people what's, we know the names of the next couple of expansions, but we're not going to talk about them yet. So here's some stuff until such time as we're ready. But so that kind of thing, nothing that involves going to Kaz Algar and the quest chain that gets you there. None of that stuff's there yet, and you won't be able to do it. And that includes stuff like leveling. I think the level cap is still 70. It usually stays the same until the actual expansion, right?
Yeah, but then until the expansion actually drops, it's gated. But you will have access to see the new talent trees, right? You can't do anything with them, but you can see them.
Mm. Yeah, and of course all the class changes are going to be there.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's important because all the class changes go live, which means you're likely going to have to redo your talent trees and everything else because a lot of things may have shifted while in flight.
Or we've even moved down a little bit. I don't know if they're actually doing that this time. I don't recall. I don't think they're like really moving stuff around too much.
It depends on the class.
I was going to say, it depends on the class. Some of the classes got a lot of their stuff moved around. In the case of Shaman, like whole talents are just completely gone. So
then they pulled out stuff and put in new stuff and so forth.
Yeah, so there's going to be some growing pains for the first week or so as you figure out where everything is and what you're going to do with it. So
yeah, in immortal words of Commander Shepard, put more stuff in this thing. The stuff goes in. Go ahead, Liz. I'm sorry.
You totally thrown me up here.
Sorry, but also go ahead, Liz.
I've just been learning new classes in WoW Remix. I've been playing a mage, which has been super fun, and I've read that they're supposed to be really good in the War Within. They're getting lots of cool stuff, and it's like I've just kind of figured out a rotation for this class. I've been doing raids and dungeons, and I kind of know what I'm doing, and now I gotta start over.
Just in time to break it for you.
Yes,
awesome. Who knows what they're doing? It's better to just kind of just go like a chaotic dog and just chase the ball. No plans.
I'm winging it. I'm winging it literally because I'm also trying to learn. I've been playing an Evoker on Remix, and I keep asking my guild leader really stupid Evoker questions, and he says, I don't know if you're trolling me, and it's like, no, I actually do not understand what's happening here. It's very confusing. I have wings, and man, Evokers are just such a strange hybrid class, and playing them in WoW Remix, it's like, yeah, this class was not designed to level this way, because everything feels weirdly put together.
I mean, nothing was, designed to work this way. I would have to argue.
It's like that
disassociations.
It's that level 10 to 60 leveling span, which is very awkward. Very awkward.
Yeah, Evokers are like a newborn colt. Like they've got massive legs and big heads and tiny little bodies. Except instead of it's mostly healing abilities being like that instead of. It's not a great. This wasn't the best metaphor, and I kind of wish I hadn't gone with it. But regardless. Briefly, let's talk about the transmog changes. We talked about them last week, but we got to talk about them again because it's transmog, and I get all excited. Basically, the things to think in mind is once we actually can log in and do the pre-patch, and then like after we get our warband set up, the next thing to do is to go to whatever place you can go to where there's a transmog vendor and immediately hop on and start looking at things because you'll be able to sort your transmog collection by all classes. Like you can filter it by all classes, not just the one you're on. Like if you're on your rogue, you can look at various plate transmogs for paladins if you want to, or what have you. And once something drops for you, like an appearance drops for you, you can learn for any armor or weapon, even if you can't equip it. If your rogue is clearing their way through, let's say Shadowfang Keep, and a two-handed sword drops, you learn it. Even if, of course, your rogue can't transmog to it because it's a two-handed sword, you now know it. So your paladin can now transmog to it, even though they weren't there when it dropped. Which I think that's like literally like the best change that they've done in years for transmog. It is so nice to know you no longer have to worry about, oh, well, I want this cloth look, but I'm not going to be able to get it on my plate character. Nope. Run all your characters through. It doesn't matter if they can use it or not. It adds to your collection. And Joe, you were saying.
I was going to say, it also helps simplify the number of times you need to run through a place potentially as well. So like if you get something that you can then learn, like if I'm on my plateware and I get a male transmog that, you know, I really wanted on my shaman, but I don't want to go back and run it as my shaman because I only have so many hours in the day, that sort of solves that problem, right? Mm-hmm. It gives you a little more freedom both ways, right? Like you have more of an opportunity to get all the things you want, but now you have the opportunity where just once you get those things to not have to go and do it multiple times. Like I remember there were people that were going with, like, they had 4 or 5 like of a plate class and they're going for very specific transmogs, right? And so like they would run the same exact thing multiple times as those, like all 5 of those characters, hoping that they would get it. And this just eliminates that as a necessity potentially, but opens it up that if you still want to do that, you still get a reward for it. So I'm A-okay with this.
Yeah, it definitely is a nice change. As a transmog junkie, I am definitely looking forward to spending some time just going through and saying, oh, wow, I can totally get my my characters I barely ever play their transmog gear. That's not sarcasm. I know it sounds like it, but it is not. Because one of the things I love is when I start a new class that I know I'm not going to level past 20, is that I can put them in like almost everything from the original World of Warcraft immediately. Like I've got a bank alt who's like level 15, the level 15 mage who's just sitting by a mailbox going, is anyone ever going to like mail me anything again? And the answer is going to be no, thanks to Warbands. I'll never use you again, little mage. But he's wearing the full tier 1 mage set from Molten Core because I had
classic.
It. Yeah.
A classic look.
And that's kind of funny to me. So that you'll be able to do that with like characters you literally never play. You'll just be able to do it as soon as you meet the character. But one thing we were going to talk about is we were talking just now about how we're not going to have Earthen yet. There's another potential allied race. It's been data mined. Blizzard has said nothing about this. They've not said this will be an allied race. There's literally nothing in terms of people talking about it. I don't think people have even seen it in the beta yet. Like I haven't seen them, but it's called the Haranir, or at least we think it's called the Haranir because it's named that in the data mine stuff. And the reason people think it might be a race that you get as an allied race eventually is that it's similar to the Volpera and others in that it has a whole bunch of customizations coming already.
Yeah,
go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, like, when Volpera released, we saw a bunch of, like, the same thing before they were announced as a allied race. They were fully animated and fully rigged, and then they had a full suite of customization. So that's why everybody is thinking that these are potentially one of the next playable races. Whether it's going to be yet another neutral race or if it's going to be faction specific, though, we're going to have no idea yet because, like Matt said, even in the beta, we haven't run into these at all. At least not that I've seen. And if somebody, did or has, please let me know where they are. But we just straight up have not seen them yet. And they're actually really kind of cool. Matt and I talked about them a little bit on Sunday's Lore Watch because we actually got a question about it. And I'm really curious to see what the story is with these guys. They look like if the Volpera, the Trolls, and the Elves all sort of like were distilled down into a single race. And it's really kind of cool. Go ahead.
I keep saying I don't agree with that one, but I keep saying it's like the Venthyr showed up. Like they have a very living Venthyr look to them. There's very heavily bat influenced. The ears, the stuff that can grow on their faces, the
but they also have teeth. I was gonna say they also have the troll underbite tusks. Like
some of them do, some of them don't. Like it's like an option you can pick to have them.
Yeah,
and that's cool too. It's like they do look kind of missing linky. Like they kind of look like the intermediate step between elves and trolls.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that the other day. But one of the things I think I didn't talk about is their eyes.
Those things are cool.
They're not traditional eyes like a normal like race that you would expect. They're sort of like this matchup between a normal humanoid's eyes and like an elf's like very I guess light infused eyes would be the best way that I could put it.
Yeah, like if you ever look really closely at any of the elves, like on a model viewer or whatever, they do have irises and pupils and all that stuff underneath the really bright glow. So it's there. These guys look like that without the glow. They've got the lit up, brightish,
slightly dimmer, right? Like
it doesn't actually have the projecting glow.
But I just think it's a really interesting tidbit, or at least something that I noticed that I was really super into as far as like looking at the customizations, because I've been staring at these things for like 3 days and just kind of like messing around with it, like the quills inside of the hair or on the shoulders, the fur patches, everything about them. Like they are really, really intriguing. They remind me or make me feel the same way I felt when Worgen were first announced, and I was able to mess around with those character models for the first time. So I'm hoping that this is an allied race, and I'm not going to lie, if it is possible to be a shaman with them, there's a very good chance that I will be a very tall, animalistic, elfy bat-looking thing, because this is a really good aesthetic, at least in my opinion.
Just name your character Kirk Langstrom, please.
One interesting thing, I think, is they can have clawed feet or have normal feet.
Yes.
So it's like you kind of have no baseline here for being monstrous or being more humanoid. So it's like they have some fur, but they can have more fur, or they can have very little fur. They can have clawed feet or not. They can have weird ears or more, humanoid ears.
Yeah.
So it's just they can have hair or they can have spines on their heads. So it's really cool. It feels like it maybe takes some inspiration from our dragon riding mounts, which have been super hyper customizable this expansion. So it's like you can make your dragon with spikes, or you can make him without spikes, or you can make him with fins. This feels a little bit like that because you can take the core race in some different directions.
Yeah, and it is really, now that you point that out, I hadn't really thought about it. But looking at the models, yeah, you absolutely can see that. Like there's
the spines that make me think dragons.
Yeah, I don't know that they're supposed to be dragony in any particular way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, not that they're dragony, but that particular characteristic made me think about how you can get spiny looks on the dragon, which isn't an inherently dragony look, but you can do it. You can make your dragon super spiky like a porcupine if you really want to.
It's really interesting to look at the feet. Yeah, it's really interesting to look at the feet too, because they have, not only do they have like the normal front facing claws, they've actually got a dew claw coming out the back of their foot.
It reminds me a lot of Quillbore.
Yeah, I can see it. So yeah, we don't know much about the Haranir yet, but we do know that they exist, and we felt like we should probably mention it because if they do turn out to be a new allied race, it feels like something we should at least discuss briefly. And so we have. So now we're going to move on to something. Go ahead.
And they're really cool. So there's that.
But now we're going to talk about something that I feel like we could have literally talked about this on 2 of our 3 podcasts, which is that Wizards of the Coast, a.k.a. Hasbro, over them like a puppet master, has hired John Haidt, who was the senior vice president at Blizzard, who was the general manager of the Warcraft franchise during Dragonflight. You may have seen interviews with him. He talked quite a bit about various things. He is now president of Wizards of the Coast, which we talked about this before, and we'll probably talk about it again. But go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, unlike some of the other hires that they've made for some of their top positions, at least John plays both D&D and Magic the Gathering. So, at least he understands the product to a certain extent because he actually is a consumer of said product. So, we were talking about this locally because me and a bunch of the other shop runners and owners in the area, we look at stuff like this to figure out kind of like what we should be doing, because some of the stuff is, doom and gloom or portents of things to come. But this one is decidedly neutral, right? He's definitely in there because of his video game experience, and they've said as much. But I don't see John or Mr. Hyder or whatever you want to call him looking to video gamify and only video gamify the existing product lines. Adding to it, sure, or trying to go into some of that stuff, I can see that. but at least he understands the product, and that the fact is, like, you know, people play D&D and pen and paper, and people play Magic and paper, so mixed bag.
His title from the press release is President of Wizards of the Coast and Digital Gaming. So I'm a little unclear on, is this its own role, or is this just he's president of Wizards of the Coast and also president of digital gaming?
This is Chris Cox doing his Chris Cox thing. He's president of WotC. That's his goal. And because Chris Cox has a hard-on, like, just an absolute raging obsession with video games right now.
Thank God you used the word obsession.
Yes. Sorry, I get one, like, to push us maybe past that PG-13 an episode. I'm taking it here. He's doing the same thing he always does, which is adding sort of that stuff onto it. He's bolting it on. Yes, we know that they're trying to explore into the digital media space. And yes, he's going to say that, you know, he's attaching it as the title is because that's what he wants him to really work on. But again, his role is president of Wizards of the Coast. That's what he was hired for, which ultimately means that he's also in charge of anything else that's under that banner, which includes their digital offerings like Magic the Gathering Arena, or, you know, the new VTT, or the digital offerings that they're going to be like for any of the content and stuff like that. That's under his purview because, again, he's the president of Wizards of the Coast. So,
and for that matter, so is the new studio that they made with various luminaries from BioWare and other studios,
which is under
the game Exodus. That's under Wizards of the Coast.
I was going to say it's under the Wizards of the Coast banner, not the Hasbro banner specifically. Yeah. Which I think is one of those distinctions. So they report to him now.
So, and that's actually a pretty good news for any video games that they may be attempting to make in-house, because if you're going to hire somebody to oversee that kind of thing, he is a good choice. You know, he has real production experience on the making of video games from multiple perspectives. He's been a producer on games from Hearthstone on.
Yeah.
And I think people, like, we will talk a lot. We're talking a lot about a various D&D and so forth, but Magic the Gathering is their biggest product. It is the biggest thing that Wizards does. And Magic the Gathering has made various, I don't want to say forays, into the digital space. I think Arena is still out, right?
So, I mean, do you want me to wax about this for like 5 minutes? Because I can
sure.
Info dump here.
Yes, wax.
All right. So at the beginning of the pandemic, this wonderful little thing came out, or has it's a nascent form called Magic the Gathering Arena. It was an attempt at Wizards of the time to try to capture a digital market basically to try to compete with Hearthstone by leveraging their exact brand of card game, by trying to make Magic mobile, put it in everybody's hands across the world, but also coincidentally getting you to buy packs of cards on there that you couldn't make into, other things, like you couldn't sell it to a secondary market because it was a completely captured market. It was pushed and pushed and pushed and grew to such an extent in their marketing that it actually killed a format. Standard, which is a rotating format that has been around since the dawn of Magic the Gathering in paper, essentially. Some of you may remember it as Type 2. But it takes the most recent sets of cards as its base that you can build your decks from. And now it's 3 years. It used to be 2 years. After a set's been out for 3 years, it rotates out, and those cards are no longer legal in the format. They killed that format to push Arena. Arena was going to be the standard replacement. And surprise, surprise, it was actually largely successful. Standard gameplay in paper has dropped to an all-time low, and most people who want to experience that, much to WotC's own chagrin, because now they basically ate their own tail, go to Arena. But here's the thing. You don't necessarily have to spend money to play Arena because it's a completely free endeavor. And everything is, again, gotchas where you can buy gems or you can earn gold by playing the game. And you can spend gold to get cards, packs of cards, just like you could gems. The only thing you can't get with gold, but you have to get with gems, is like avatars and card sleeves and like really random minutia like that. So yes, Arena is still around. It's actually still going strong. They've actually imported more formats into it, such as a Commander variant called Brawl. or, they have what they call Explorer, which is a digital version of a format called Pioneer, which is an eternal format that comprises of all cards that were printed in Standard from 2013 forward. So it is still growing, and it is still a very large entry point for Magic because, and I will tell you this as a shop runner, the people that I get that come in that ask about cards for the first time have already played Arena because it's free. They've already gotten a taste of it. This is their new onboarding for people into the formats or into the product line. So it's never going away. It's only going to stay around, and it's only going to continue to adopt and morph to suit the needs of whatever the current generation is. I'm done.
I'm here. I'm just, trying to think of something to say. But regardless, I think that it's interesting to see this move. Liz, do you have anything to say before I go into a long thing?
No, go for it.
Okay. I think we've all, to a certain degree, been thinking about how tabletop is changing in response to the digital media. It's something that's, the VTT Joe mentioned, the virtual tabletop. There's a lot of different ways that video games and tabletop gaming are sort of merging and melting. I don't like to reference it like this, but I like to think about it in terms of movies and other media. Movies have essentially absorbed comic books. Like, comic books are no longer published. They're no longer created and published for people to buy them and read them as comic books. They are essentially minds. And those minds are mined by media companies that want to produce TV shows, cartoons, and movies. And that's what, at this point, that's what Marvel is essentially this thing that Disney bought, and it's sort of stuck to the side of Disney, like the angelfish, where the giant female absorbs a tiny little male and just literally sticks him on her, and he grows into her, and eventually there's no separateness, and just everything about him is absorbed into her, and then she can have babies, and those babies, I guess, would be the movies. And another lovely metaphor, but regardless. That kind of process is what we're seeing with companies absorbing book publishers and comic book
publishers into the mega conglomerates.
Yeah, like if you look at what's going on with Warner Brothers and how it's been corporately absorbed like 3 times now. The reason Warner Brothers keeps getting corporately absorbed is because as a movie entity, it actually already owns a mine. They've owned the DC Comics mine for decades, and they keep almost figuring out how to profit from it. Like, people like Batman, let's put more Batman out, and that keeps working, but they haven't really been able to do what Marvel did, where they just suddenly, they went from, we have to desperately sell our properties to other companies to stay alive, to, we could just own them, and now we have all their properties.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in a way, DC Comics has always been that for Warner Brothers, but Warner Brothers has not figured out how to capitalize on it. And we're now at a point where, like, do you think that the Discovery Channel, like Discovery, are they going to do it? Are they going to figure out how to capitalize on it?
No.
I don't know the answer to that question. Joe's saying no.
I don't think so.
But we're seeing with tabletop, there is a risk that this process will happen to video games and tabletop, that video game producers will start absorbing tabletop companies, and it's already happening. Like, we talked about how Wizards has invested $1 billion in digital media, like video games and other digital stuff for their games. Back in like the early 2000s, like between 2004 and 2010, I cannot remember the name of the company, but the company that owns EVE Online, which is someday we will talk about EVE Online.
CCP.
Yeah, CCP bought White Wolf Games. The guys who owned Vampire the Masquerade, they bought them. They just bought the whole company, and they were going to make all these video games based on their products. Then Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines exploded on the tarmac, and was just absolutely unplayable, and everyone was like, oh my god, nobody wants to play these. And it's like, no, people wanted to play them. The game is unplayable, like, because the company making the game died a horrible death. It's not, the game is buggy and unplayable. but people want to play it so badly that one person sat down and wrote a patch that fixed it because he was just that desperate to play it. People love Bloodlines now, to the point where there's a Bloodlines 2 that is currently in development hell. This keeps happening. Like, we've seen this actually happen multiple times. Wizards of the Coast bought D&D, it bought everything TSR had from a holding company that took it after TSR itself died, because the head of TSR was trying to make Buck Rogers into the next big thing, because that family owned the rights to Buck Rogers. It was the grandchildren of, I want to say Flint Dille, but I can never remember the name of the guy who actually wrote Buck Rogers. I mean, come on, it's Buck Rogers. They were trying to turn it into the next big thing because they owned the property. Then Wizards bought D&D, and then Hasbro bought Wizards. And it didn't buy it to get D&D. They bought it to get, and they didn't even buy it to get Magic. They bought it to get the rights to Pokemon.
Which they then promptly lost.
Yeah, they then promptly lost. But that's why they originally bought them. Then they were like, well, we own this. We might as well make money out of that then. And right now, let's be clear. The only thing Hasbro does that makes them any money, the only money-making venture that they have, that actually generates profit, is Wizards of the Coast.
Yep.
That's it. That's all they have.
It's because they've killed their toy line. They've killed anything that isn't chasing after whales on any of their other offerings. Mm-hmm. This is literally all they have, because it turns out you can't just sell a couple high-end things and think you're going to make a bunch of profit, but selling a bunch of stuff that people actually want, like, I don't know, like packs of cards and Dungeons and Dragons books and officially licensed merchandise, tends to make you money. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's very important about them hiring John Haidt, is because, as Joe said, yeah, he understands the thing he's going into. It's kind of like when Lego was on the verge of bankruptcy and they hired a guy who was a hedge fund manager, and everyone thought, oh God, we're all going to die. And then Lego became super popular again because the guy was a Lego maniac. He loved Lego. He was an absolute lunatic for Lego. And so he was like, well, it would be the more profitably sensible thing to do this, but we're not doing that. We're making lots of more Legos. And they're like, okay. And, the company was saved. I'm not saying John Haidt will do that, but I'm saying that he has the potential.
He understands it, and why this is such a big deal, and I want to just highlight this. The past executives that they brought on, we've talked about it on this podcast as well as the Tavern Watch podcast, the executives that they brought in before are people that were like Microsoft, Xbox gaming executives who never played D&D or Magic, and never cared to learn about them, right? Like on record saying, I don't care about that. And one of the things that you used to hear about from people that worked there was, having play sessions, going on lunch and like breaking out like a couple decks and playing a game of Commander, or, having a weekly game that they would play with coworkers and people in the office. Like management would play with folks, and it was like a bonding experience because the people that were involved in it were passionate about the product. They loved the product because they were consumers of the product. It is, in my opinion, in business, if you are not a consumer of the product, you are too far away from it to understand what people like about it. It's a double-edged sword because sometimes you can be too close to it, but again, he plays these games. He plays D&D. He plays Magic. He understands the real world implications of some of the decisions they make, and as a result, I think we'll make smarter decisions, or at least I hope we'll make smarter decisions that will be. Digital is fine if it's separate. Digital is not fine if it cannibalizes the physical stuff to get there, right? Yeah. And I think he understands that, or at least I hope he understands that.
Unfortunately, while I'm sure we could talk about this for another 20 minutes, we do have other things we got to cover, and I want to get to at least some of them as fast as possible. We haven't even talked about the new Hearthstone expansion that's coming, because I didn't know about it. It's here.
It's here. It's live right now.
So, Liz, please tell us about the Hearthstone expansion.
It's live. It's definitely live. I think this is the Hearthstone expansion we have been least excited about in some time. It's fine, and it's also just another Hearthstone expansion. It has a beach vacation theme, and it has the usual number of new cards, but it doesn't have a lot of excitement. There are cards that let you use cards from another class. Each class has one card that lets them use cards from a specific other class, and and it's just that other class. So there are some interesting new combinations there, but it also limits them to just using cards from one specific other class that are specifically from this expansion. So there are some restrictions that make this kind of less wild and crazy and exciting. Because when I first heard about this, you can use cards from other classes, it's like, that's insane! But it's very limited, and while I can see why they had to do that from a gameplay standpoint, it's a little less exciting, and we actually haven't seen a ton of theory-crafted decks on these, which also surprised me. So we're going to see what comes up in the next few days now that the expansion is live, how people are using these new cards. What kind of overpowered combinations are there? Because we don't know yet. It just went live, and we're going to see how these cards play out. But it's an expansion that didn't come out with any big new gameplay mechanics. It's like, there were new slight changes to this kind of card. But it's not. I'm trying real hard not to sound down on this expansion, but it feels a little feature light. These multi-class cards could be very cool, but we haven't seen a lot of theory crafting around them, so we'll see how it plays out in the next few days.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I feel like I'm to the point where I'm like, I didn't even know this expansion existed, and I know we've talked about it before, and yet immediately I forgot it. Usually I remember that the expansions exist, because it's like, ooh, cool, we're finally going to steal a city, or ooh, cool, there's Murloc Death Knights. But then when it's like, oh, cool, that there's a dwarf surfing. I mean, cool,
yeah.
But
yeah, that's exactly it.
But
so I mean, it's interesting, but not that interesting.
Yeah. I do, however, I'm going to jump ship here because I want to do something a little unusual because we keep threatening to do this one and then we don't do it. I'm going to jump down into our emails really fast and say, Joe, you said last week you wanted to talk about Diablo 4 expansions and pricing. I just want you to do that now. Just do it now so we don't miss out on it. Do you want me to read the question? Or you?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do the thing, and then I'll do my reply in here.
Okay, this one's from Lucci. Question for the Blizzard Watch podcast. I'm finding it hard to agree with the pricing of the upcoming Diablo 4 expansion. It's only about $20 cheaper than the WoW expansion in Australian dollars, but I am happier to pay that than for Diablo. I feel like WoW feels like more game for your dollar than what Diablo is. I know people put a heap of work into each game, and I love them all. I feel Diablo is a $25 to $35 price tag than the $60 price tag. What's your view on the pricing of game expansions? Am I just out of touch? Keep up the great work. Go.
All right. So we've talked about this a lot in the past, and I'm going to talk about it again. We're sort of spoiled as far as prices of video games go. Yes, it sounds like $60 is very expensive. Super Mario Brothers was $60 when it was released in 1984, 85. In this particular case, Diablo 2 was released in 2000, with Lord of Destruction releasing shortly thereafter. I want to say it was like 2001.
Yeah, it was a year later.
Yeah. The price of Diablo 2, what do you think it was, players at home? Pause here and make your guess. Did you say $60? Because you'd be correct. It was $60 on release when it was released in 2000. Would you like to take a guess at what the expansion, Lord of Destruction, was released at in 2001? If you said $35, you would be correct. These are not obscene prices, right? These are actually fairly low. Like if you were to look at it for inflation, I'm actually looking it up right now. But I think it's like, what if it was $35 in 2000 is $65 now, right? It's more than double what it, or almost double what it was then. And $60 then is $109 today. So like, these are not obscene prices. In fact, they could be asking for much higher prices. And in other games, we do see higher prices for the expansion. Is it for everybody? No, completely understandable. If that's too much for you, 100% understood. But looking at it objectively, these prices are, kind of low. Like, it could be much, much higher than it actually is. So I think in US dollars, I think the expansion is going to be $50 I think it's like 40 or 50. I can't remember. Matt, can you help me out here?
I don't know off the top of my head, but keep talking and I'll look it up.
Yeah. And like, again, prices of video games have been going up recently. That's going to happen. It's just, or what is it? I think it's like, it might be $70 for it. That's about on par with what they've always cost, essentially. So that's my rant about it. That's my take about it is it's not really that much more than it was way back when. The price is roughly the same. And I think it is like, I want to say it's like between $50 and $70 for the expansion right now for Diablo 4. I was looking at actually the War Within, the base edition. These are Canadian dollar prices. I'm sorry, it converts them automatically, but it's $64.99 for the base edition, $89.99 for the Heroic Edition, and $114.99 for the Epic Edition. So, since American dollars, it would be lower. I would say it's probably like $50, $70, $100. And Diablo 4 at the 3 levels, the standard edition is $39.99. I happen to find it very quickly. The standard edition is $39.99. The deluxe edition is $59.99. And the ultimate edition is $89.99 in US dollars. So even that standard edition, which is all we had back then, there wasn't any specials. You got pre-order bonuses that were physical things that they handed to you when you bought the CD back then. We spent $35 on it back then. Technically, it's $4 more than it was in 2000. So it's just something to consider when we start talking about the price of video games, especially if it's something you enjoy, because the hope is that, and I'm not saying this with Blizzard or some of the major ones, because that's a whole different animal, but at least with the smaller game dev studios, when they're charging you $40, it means that they keep making more games, right? Mm-hmm. And they're probably charging you less than they really should be. And if you're a fan of like Ghost Pirate or of the any of the other ones that are out there that are devs that talk about this stuff, monetizing games is really, really hard because we as consumers have a mindset of we must pay the least amount possible. As a matter of fact, things like the Steam sales have completely ruined our perception of what a game is worth, because if we don't want to buy that game now, we'll just wait for it to go on sale for Steam. It's such a cultural thing that we do now that you don't even think about it. And then the devs get less money, and that's why so many studios like fail, right? And that's why part of the game industry for a while, and I'm not saying that they did this for altruistic reasons, please do not misconstrue this, but that's also why they started looking at other ways to make revenue, like battle passes, and like things like games as service. Those evil words happened because people were still expecting 5 years ago, 6 years ago, to only spend $50 on a game, when 20 years prior to that, $50 was worth half as much as, it was worth twice as much as it is now, right?
Yeah, inflation has basically, the prices of everything has bumped up. If you go to a grocery store and you're buying milk and it's twice as much as it was last year or 2 years ago, you grumble, but you buy it. But in the gaming industry, inflation people don't seem to grasp that inflation exists. And it is weird. It has very distortive effects, as Joe is pointing out. It's not just stuff like buying, various DLC costing money, various, buy this skin, buy this mount, buy all these cards, maybe you'll get this thing. It's also in terms of like how you see the tiered releases.
Yeah.
Like we were just talking about it. You can buy it at this level and get it for this much, but if you want to get all the really super cool version, you have to spend this much. It's like, it's practically twice as much for the top end version of the game as it is for the base version of the game. That is not something they did back in 2000. You did not buy Diablo 2 Ultimate and it had like a million different things and it cost like, $120.
And pets, cosmetic pets.
And cosmetic pets.
Little transmog sets. It's like, I think maybe why it leaves a bad taste in your mouth is all the advertising and the aggressiveness of it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Of all of the extras they are trying to sell us. And we're like, listen, guys, I just want a video game that I can buy and play. And you keep trying to sell me this and that and a battle pass. And I just want to play your video game. And I'm tired.
I mean, also for those of you that play World of Warcraft, the original vanilla World of Warcraft released at a $50 price point in 2004. City of Heroes released at a $40 price point in 2004. Compare that to what we pay now, right? Like, we're just talking about this expansion. I forgot how much Burning Crusade was, but Burning Crusade was cheaper. I think it was like 30 or 35.
Yeah, it was
like
about
that.
half the price of the base game.
Yeah. So, and I understand people are like, oh, it was $50 plus, $15 a month, US. Yeah. And we're still doing that. But even now, like the prices of them have gone up from 2004 to now. The base level has gone up $20. That's not a lot.
Which is not double 50. It's like 78.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as much as we could talk more about this, we have like 6 minutes and a bunch of other stuff to at least mention. So Diablo 4, they did the reveal in the Spiritborn class, including a little video trailer with some gameplay and stuff. Quickly, do either of you have any opinions on this?
I think that I think it has been significantly overhyped because not that it doesn't look cool, but Blizzard made such a big deal about making a brand new Diablo class, nothing we have ever seen in the franchise before. And then they show this, and it's like, yeah, that's a monk. What you're showing me is a monk, and also it has spirit animals.
So like it's a monk.
It's a monk, and it has spirit animals, which are exactly like the druid spirit animals, where the druid's whole special mechanic in Diablo 4 is that you have these animal powers, and you can go to it. You have a special interface, and you go and you choose which ones to activate based on different kinds of animals. Well, the Spiritborn, they also have that exact same thing. So, except it's like you choose a primary animal spirit and a secondary animal spirit instead of choosing one thing from each of your animal spirits. So this was just hyped so hard as something brand new that we had never seen before in Diablo that was so tied into the expansion lore and the Hantu. And what we got was a monk with some druid powers. And I'm like, okay, this is cool, but this is not what you were selling me.
Yeah, I will say that it does have some cool lore witch implications. Joe, do go read it and go watch the video because you and I could talk about this thing at some point.
Oh no, it's on my list before Sunday.
Yeah. Going to move on to Overwatch 2. They got Juno, which is a space-themed support hero. Joe, do you have anything to say about this? I know Liz and I don't play Overwatch too much.
Not really. Overwatch has gotten to a weird place right now with me where I'm starting to fall out of love with it again. So I don't really have much to say about it. It's a space hero. They come from space. It's like Winston, but not. Like, I don't know what else to say about it.
I will say that very brief rundown, just based on what I saw of it, is it's sort of like a classic 1950s sci-fi
like
science fantasy hero, like the bubble hat and the zap gun. If you remember, again, we mentioned her earlier, Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon, it themes back to that, except Juno is, I would say, female presenting. I didn't have time to find out if Juno was actually considered non-binary or what, but female presenting, I would say. And it's an interesting kit. It looks to be like, again, it's shooting people to heal them, which isn't new to Overwatch at this point. So, yeah. But we should talk about... Oh, go ahead, Liz.
It's one of those things that strikes me as a really cool thing that I would like to hear some stories about.
Yeah, it would be great if we had stories.
Which is what Overwatch doesn't do anymore. So I'm kind of like brief excitement and then, oh, okay.
Yeah. There's some other stories that aren't necessarily Blizzard related, but what the heck we're talking about anyway.
We can skip these if we want to.
I'm going to talk about the Baldur's Gate 3 patch really fast because it's got mod tools in it. It's the mod support patch, the one where people have been writing mods for it this whole time, but it's very much taking a page from Bethesda's book in that Bethesda's games tend to last a really long time. People keep playing them. People keep they come back into vogue. Fallout 4 is currently still pretty high on Steam's most played lists because of the video game and so forth. But the reason that Fallout 4 managed to survive to this point and is still playable is mods. Bethesda games, it's mods. Mods are why people love these games because they can mod them to do whatever they want, and they have lots of support from the publisher in that. This is interesting because CD Projekt Red did something similar with Cyberpunk when they were heading towards, we're not doing any more content patches, but they keep doing them, but they keep saying they're not doing them. This one we promise is the last content patch. Then they do another one. But I honestly feel like the poor guys are hooked. They just can't stop. But regardless, when you get to near the end of a dev cycle, putting out mod tools like this is a really interesting way to get the community to keep your game going. And especially since Larian is done with Baldur's Gate 3, they're not going to keep doing this. It's an interesting choice. I am really interested to see if we start getting right now, the Baldur's Gate 3 mods are, to put it mildly, awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're entirely fan-generated with no support from the publisher. Putting out the mod toolkit means now that the support is baked into the game.
It makes it much easier. Like, you're not going to have a lot of the things that, like, one of the most downloaded mods was modifying party size. And that's absolutely phenomenal. Except it would occasionally just break the game if you saved at the exact wrong moment. But now having tools that are built into the game to accommodate that means that stuff like that will officially be released. And that's, it'll have support and have less bugs, which just makes them ultimately a much better experience for players.
And Liz posted something here that I wanted to mention really fast because it's Stardew Valley. Concerned Ape, Eric Barone, who is the developer on Stardew Valley. At this point, he's the head of the Stardew Valley. He used to be pretty much the only person, but now he's got a team. But he says that they're never going to charge for DLC. And that's important because Stardew Valley keeps putting out DLC when they say they're not going to.
Yep,
like they keep saying, we're done, we're not doing it anymore. Boom, another one comes out. Like they again, much like CD Projekt Red, Mr. Barone does not appear to be able to stop himself.
Well, don't forget let's not forget that Stardew Valley started because Harvest Moon games were not being made properly, and they decided, okay, forget you, Jobu, I'll do it myself. If that's a very old movie reference, well, for some of you younger folks, don't worry about it.
It's definitely the case. Liz, you were saying something?
I do want to just read what he wrote about this, which is, I swear on the honor of my family name, I will never charge money for a DLC or update for as long as I live. Screen cap this and shame me if I ever violate this oath. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and also, it's not like they weren't going to anyway.
Yeah.
But the reason that I also wanted to mention that is very simple in that it now allows us to go over to Bethesda and say that they're unionizing.
Mm-hmm.
And the union that they're doing is completely different than unions we've seen other companies try and do, which I think is fascinating. And I think it's because Bethesda is sliding into a place where a lot of their properties are essentially making media about them. Like there's a rumor about a Skyrim show, or
would not even be remotely surprised.
Yeah, and
after the Fallout show was a big success, I think it's very easy to say, okay, what other Bethesda properties can we turn into something? Because
why do we not have a Prey TV show yet? Why do you not have a Dishonored TV show? Come on, Dishonored would be a better TV show than it is a game.
The thing about Bethesda is they build really interesting, intricate worlds, which are often really interesting to explore. Like, the stories of the games themselves are not always the highlight. It's having this place in which you can exist. And that makes such a great setting for a show because you can go in and, twist things around and tell the story that you feel like telling, but you infuse it with the world and make it part of the world. It leaves you so many creative options while also tapping into this sort of vast universe that exists.
Yeah, and the unionization here, it's not based on stuff like quality assurance testing or the wall-to-wall union stuff. This is essentially just straight up, everybody here is unionizing. This entire company is going to form a union. And I mean, I'm actually really surprised to see that Microsoft hasn't tried harder to kill it.
I'm shocked, frankly, because we've seen Microsoft bust unions before and just say, oh, you're unionizing? Well, actually, we don't need any of this division, so you're all fired.
But it's not like they can fire everybody at Bethesda at one go.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard, but these are things we've seen big companies do before. Take very hard line, strong arm tactics. And, of course, Microsoft could still do that. Just because they formed a union doesn't mean they get anything out of it. The union has to negotiate with Microsoft for better wages or better benefits or whatever it is the developers there want. And, Microsoft can come to those talks and drag their feet and never give them anything. So this is unionizing is step one. There's still a lot of
you win. Yeah, absolutely.
It's still a lot of obstructionist stuff that Microsoft could do to underpay game developers and other bad corporate habits. Yeah, but it's great to see this happening.
Go ahead, Liz.
Is this the biggest game company we've seen unionized so far?
Ubisoft is unionized.
Ubisoft is? Okay. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Thing?
Ubisoft is French. They've got union. They are seriously unionized. I don't know if their American branches are unionized, like Ubisoft Montreal and so forth. I have no idea. I don't think they are. But the main Ubisoft in France is absolutely unionized to the gills. One thing that was pointed out in the Kotaku article that I really think is worth considering is that one of the reasons that Microsoft might have held back was quite simply that they signed a neutrality agreement. Mm-hmm. And the reason they signed a neutrality agreement with the CWA, which is the organization that helps unionize, I can never remember the name.
The Communication Workers of America.
Yeah, the Communication Workers of America deal that they made was basically Microsoft was trying to I don't want to say trick. I do want to say trick, but I don't think it's accurate. But they were trying to get people to let them buy Activision Blizzard. And and people were like, this is going to cause monopoly. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. And in order to basically get enough people behind it, they signed that deal. So they're not going to come down and try and union bust as hard as they have in the past, because they want to keep that deal in place, because without it, they might seriously be in some trouble. A lot of problems might happen. I don't know how much I believe that, but I do think it's worth considering. And if Microsoft gets more unionized, right now it's Bethesda, but if other studios under the Microsoft umbrella go with the same, wall-to-wall unionizing, where it's literally workers throughout the entire thing. It's not like, we've got a union for, people who do, video, quality testing, and we've got a union for people who do, video graphics. No, it's a union for everybody. That's harder for them to stomp on. Like Liz pointed out, they can't just say, okay, well, we don't need anybody at Bethesda. We're going to, we're not at a point yet where you can just say, we'll just make games with AI and they'll just have an AI write the game. I said we're not there yet. I didn't say we'll never get there. Right now we're not. So yeah, I think that's it for news though. We've pretty much mentioned everything at this point, and we are several minutes over. So yeah, unless you guys can think of anything else we should talk about.
I mean, there's plenty we should talk about, but I think we've done enough.
It's a big day with the patch going out today. There's a lot, but I think at this point, next week we'll be talking about the fallout from WoW patch 11.0.1, because there's sure to be some fallout. It's
100%.
And I'm very much sorry that we didn't get to do more emails. I had to get that Lucci one in because we have been sitting on that one for like 3 weeks now, and every week Joe's like, "Oh, I want to talk about that." So yeah, I definitely wanted to get that one in here. So I apologize for everybody else who also wrote cool questions.
Well, I appreciate it because this was an episode where I got to talk a lot about stuff that I know a lot about, so it made me feel very happy.
No, I'm going to tell you right now, he didn't send it specifically to either podcast, but you might want to look at Skiffer's question.
Oh, I did.
Okay, so you might want to snag that at some point.
Trust me. I'm good. We know it will be stolen.
All right, cool. But this has been the Blizzard Watch podcast. I'm going to ask Joe to do the thing.
Blizzard Watch is made possible due to your generous contributions at patreon.com/blizzardwatch. Woo! Man, words are hard today. Your continued support means that this podcast signing community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, a better chance at having your question answered on our podcast with a queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you to Liz, by the way, for also remembering that there was a Hearthstone expansion, because I absolutely didn't, and that's on me.
It's like so lightweight that we didn't actually even republish the post we had about it today. But of course, there are also other things going on today that it kind of had me a little distracted. So
it's absolutely the case. I mean, I was sitting here most of the day thinking, are the servers up yet? And they have not been. They're still not.
It's true. It's all true.
Yeah, we recorded we've been doing this since the pre-show, an hour and a half now plus, and they're still not up. So yeah, who knows when that will be?
Listen, we're just gaming like we did in 2006. It's fine.
Yeah, we're gonna end up in the Stone Talon Mountains on a boat.
I mean, if they stick to their second revised release schedule, we have about 20 minutes before the server's coming up. We maybe have about 20 more minutes of warbands converting before we can log in. So, truly, we will see when we see.
Yes, but regardless, thank you guys so much for being here with us. This has been the Blizzard Watch podcast. If you have a question for the podcast, you can send it to our Discord server. We have 2 channels there, the Q and Podcast Questions channel for just about anybody who wants to ask a question, and the Patron Q and Podcast Questions channel for our patrons, because we love you and you make it possible for us to do a show. Or you can email us, podcast@blizzardwatch.com. We actually even did get a question this week, and hopefully we'll roll that one into next week. So cool. Take it easy, everyone. Thank you very much, and we'll be back next week.